be touched. And this triple transition is fostering a green economy on the one side, on the other side, productivity, innovation, and digitalization, but also social and social well-being, cohesion, and participatory decision making. And since good things come in threes, I have three distinctive speakers here, and it's not a surprise that these three angles need to be tackled. So I'm welcoming Giorgia Rambelli again, Director of the Urban Transitions Mission, and Iasonas Sioutis, Scientific Project Manager, and also working in the ELABORATOR project at the National Technical University of Athens in the Institute of Communication and Computer Systems. And last but not least, Andrea Ramirez, Associate Academic Officer in the Urban Futures and Transformation Program, working in the Transformative Urban Coalitions Project at the United Nations University in the Institute of Environment and Human Security. So I have it. So I would like to start with you, Giorgia. The green economy. So the green economy is about investing in renewable energy, in energy efficiency, in promoting sustainable transportation, and so on. And cities have a lot of possibilities there, and also challenges. Can you a little bit highlight what main experiences you have from the cities in the youth cohort in this regard?
Thank you very much for the question, and I'm delighted to be in the panel with these wonderful speakers. For colleagues that just joined throughout the discussion, just quickly, the Urban Transitions Mission that I have the pleasure to be the director of brings together 105 cities from 45 countries across the world, and our overall objective is to support transition to net zero, resilient and inclusive futures. That's what we do. And one of the first things that we do, and I mentioned that earlier, is to kind of assess what are the different pain points and priorities that these communities have. So we have a long conversation with them, individual assessment and interview, and we try to really dig into what are the core challenges that they are facing. And when it comes to green economy and transition, I think you already say the word economy, in what we are discussing. I think one of the biggest challenges that are coming across is really how to move from the planning phase to the actual investment and implementation phase. So a lot of our communities have been very busy kind of rethinking what the approaches for the transition would look like. I think the word integration and this type of holistic vision comes across more and more. So there is an increased understanding that to be able to have a green transition, you cannot just think about one sector or one investment on its own, but you really need to connect all these different sector pieces to make sure that you have, a green society, a sustainable society, an inclusive society on the ground. And this comes with not only investing in new technologies like renewable energy or energy efficiency measure, but also thinking about how do they reflect on the quality of life at the local level. So for renewable energy, I can share some example. We have communities like Kisumu in Kenya. They started their journey together with ICCS to become 100% renewable a few years ago with a political commitment. Now we are supporting them in making that 100% renewable commitment in practice. And what is interesting is that this is not just about provision of energy, installation of PV, but they are thinking systemically. They are thinking, what does that mean for our vehicle infrastructure? Can we use that, to power sustainably our two-wheelers, three-wheelers? What does that mean for our main industry, fishing industry? So how do we make sure that we are using that renewable energy to also support our economy on the ground? And how do we make sure that this is also helping have a new skilled labor that can learn new professions that can fit into this trajectory that we are undertaking? Another interesting example and trend, I would say, that again gives you this sense of how we are bringing together in the green economy new solutions is the cooling sector. There has been, of course, a lot of talking around urban island effect. We know that there are certain materials that need to be advanced in terms of innovation, like, for example, cooling fluids for our air conditionings, new type of solutions and software that can help us manage better temperature locally, better materials, and even a return to original construction techniques, for example. So again, new skilled labor that can come forward, learning from the past and not just from the future. And this is another area where there is a clear trend, not only in terms of needs, unfortunately, our world is heating up, we know, but also in terms of trying to give this kind of holistic responses that can really foster not only the development, but also the economy locally. And here I have one more reflection. That are, we've been talking about energy poverty for a very long time. We've been talking about transport poverty to a certain extent in the past, but there is also an increased cooling poverty that we are seeing. A lot of people that are affected, the areas, and we see that from, for example, geospatial data, areas in the cities where the temperature is higher have less trees, and are also very often the places where the income is much lower in average. So all of this comes together, and when we talk about green economy, we need to have all of this data in mind to be able to really decide how to provide solution. And I will conclude with the last trend that we see, and that's to try to link together not only the development of the strategies and the plans, not only making the case for investment in the different infrastructures that are needed, but also to use digital solutions, use data, use information to really connect the planning, the implementation, and the attraction to the investors to make sure that this is happening on the ground. So I think the other big trend that we see is not only to rely more and more on the potential that data can have, but also in utilizing tools like digital twins, for example, to understand better what is our trajectory, what could it look like. Now that comes with some threats, not only cybersecurity, but also having exhaustive governance locally of this information and making sure that the data of our citizens are secure. But it also comes with a cost, and unfortunately, a lot of these solutions are still far too expensive for our cities. So I think this is a space where eventually, when we talk about green economy investment, we move away from just thinking it's PV panels, it's energy efficiency. Digital will also fit into that bill together with nature-based solutions and many other potential opportunities. But there is still a little bit of a long way to go and some challenges that need to be tackled for these resources and for these tools to really be utilized at the scale that are needed.
Thank you very much, Giorgia. Thank you. I turn to Jason, and you have mentioned already digitalization. So is digitalization innovation important in your ELABORATOR project, and how do the cities work there? And there are 4 cities, there are some that are more advanced. How is this exchange of knowledge and capacity building, to think?
Through a lot of work. You mentioned also productivity. So
productivity,
I don't know if we're referring to the population productivity, which is of course enhanced once you create the right circumstance for that. The transport is very part of it. But yeah, the actual productivity of the cities as well, and how they perform while they are trying to make interventions in their own urban planning. Yeah, this is also important. So. In the previous session, you mentioned the cities by the hundreds. We only have 12 in our project, and we had to bring them together, to work together, to sing together to a single plan. Not a single actually, but a customized plan for them, or how to implicate citizens. I mean, we could go, I could give you a quick overview of the size of the project. It's not so big, but the complexity of it for 12 cities says everything. So it's 12 living labs. 9 of them are already familiar with what is climate neutrality since they participate in this initiative. So if you could move. So these are the living labs, and the idea was that some of them, they don't all have the same needs. Some cities are more advanced than others, so we twin them. We try to make the more advanced ones give the example, the best practices, and share with the less advanced ones. We were surprised to see that this worked vice versa in some occasions. What considered as a city that you have achieved might not be as true in the end as other cities have done. So I will not get into too much detail as well. We have a lot of data collection, not only from the citizens, but also from digital sources as well. For example, we study the possibility of accidents through specific camera sensors, how many bikes passed before intervention and after, so we can see the footprint, the footprint eventually, the carbon footprint, the noise footprint, and so on. So a lot of that to be collected, a lot of feedback from the citizens to be collected. If we could go. Now the next one has a lot of clicks. This is the process. So we have like 4 stages: setup, discovery, implementation, and evaluation and dissemination. It's whatever was also already mentioned in the previous presentation as well, the usual issues, the usual suspects. So we start from the base, from the citizens, the stakeholders, the communities. Then we developed some theoretical tools and methodologies from our experience, and we cannot totally delete expertise and the scientific approach. We do need the citizens. We know why we need to innovate with them, because the innovations are addressing to the citizens. That's why we start with the initial suggestion and then we build up with them. Moving to the discovery phase, we co-designed in a way the interventions for the cities. So they already had an idea of what they want to do. They always do, but it's not always aligned with what the citizens actually want and need. And this is also one of the toughest breaks, because the citizens do understand the direct needs, but they cannot easily see the future needs: sustainability, efficiency, a greener city to live. I mean, many of them do want to prejudge on this, but usually we live in an era where today people live for today. So they co-design interventions. We put them into a room, into many rooms actually, in city, with workshops, interactions between different citizen groups that have different interests, let's say, or ways of thinking. So this helped in a democratic way promote eventually what we wanted to do in each city. Each city wanted actually to do. Some of them actually even cancelled some of their initial plans and redesigned them from the bottom to the top again. So after definition, we have a lot of cycles, you see. We come back and forth to the citizens every time to see, did we do something wrong? Are you okay with it? Contact the other cities, see what feedback they had. Maybe you didn't consider this or that. So this is 12 cities we're talking about. So even with that, the complexity is huge. And the problems, of course, that arise in communication were many. I'm happy to say that after 2 years in this project, we managed to have everyone synced. After a point of calling each other, hey, we had this issue, what did you do on that? Without us even needing to do a workshop or introduce something, they have the playbook already. Everything is on our website, by the way, the ELABORATOR website. It's open access material, so the methodologies, the results, how many people we reached. It's around 12,000 right now, different users in those cities. What the cities did, how people reacted. A lot of information, as it was mentioned in the previous session, that might be quite a lot, but it is there for you to find. We hope that in collaboration with Sioutis and Net Zero Cities, we eventually managed to summarize. We will summarize that in the project, the evaluation phase, but we hope that we actually put that information somewhere to be kept for the next projects to come as well. After 2 years, we managed to sync. And we even managed to call more observer cities to start syncing with them as well. This is a process that we're following now. It is still open for applications, by the way, if someone is interested, all expenses paid. It took a whole project actually to create the background of this communication. You all know how hard it is, I guess. You have been working in the same area. I do want to stress the importance of co-creation with the citizens and how they eventually end up to be productive as well themselves within the process, make the cities more productive, the action process more productive, financially more viable in those terms, more usable by the citizens and more inclusive. So innovation is also important for us in this part. A lot of digital tools being used and they have to be inclusive. It's one of our core objectives. So you have a tool to design a city, it should be adjusted to be used even by a kid, which actually has been done. We went to schools with Super Mario, a game that the partner React developed, and there was a simulation of their neighborhood in Sarajevo, and they were just moving signs, streets, crossroads, to understand how it would work, and they could see the result live. Elder people, disabled people, we do focus a lot in vulnerable road users and this, and of of course, innovating in this part technologically is important and including them digitally. I'm stressing this too much, I think. Okay. Regarding those three factors, I think this will be it.
Thank you very much. I mean, you already mentioned it, and short-term thinking, not including the communities from the beginning. So I think, Andrea, this is also a focus in your research and if projects or research or transition. How can the transition become more inclusive and it involves community side and stakeholders better? Many thanks, very much.
If I knew the answer, I wouldn't be here. But I will try my best. I want to first thank you outside Europe. Let's move out, maybe Kenya again, or maybe Latin America, or a context of high vulnerability. In those contexts, if you don't create coalitions, if you don't know what your neighbor knows what to do, then you come nothing. Right? So coalitions comes as a survival kit at the beginning. Coalitions comes when you have to decide what to have for meal at home. But also coalitions comes when you don't understand or when you don't trust your policymakers. And so when we speak about city making or city changers, we need also to reframe who are the persons driving this change. So the first point for the coalition is maybe the coalition is made out of people who doesn't think the same. Maybe we come from different interests and different backgrounds, and maybe we don't agree on which football team is the best. But we move forward for the energy transition, or we move forward for the mobility or the digital gap, or we move forward for the basics in infrastructure. What we do at UNU is basically understand how, through research or through project implementation, we can extract these recommendations from these contexts, which don't have the luxury of experimentation all the time. So we can replicate these to policy. So we consider ourselves researchers and translators because we try to integrate capacity development, research, and policy. In this work, coalition also means being fair, because it is only through city networks, it is only through project managers, it is only through these different expertises that we can deliver our message. So my first insight will be urban transitions as well as urban transformation starts with people. And as persons, we come with our ideas, we come with our backgrounds. And cities are spaces of diversity. We are framing these discourses in the need of having others' opinion, but also listening to each other. And that entails new capacities. So my second point is not only, we start with people, but also we come to the narratives of these people, to the emotions of these people. So it's not only the logic and the data. When we work in climate, we know what's the future. We know what the future will like. We are going to work in the following years on making this in absolutely specific terms. But the story is not inspiring if we don't translate it. And the story won't move to action if we don't hear what is happening on the ground, what are the needs on the ground. So that's why narratives are also part of the transformation. And in these narratives, maybe we will need a new set of skills. Maybe we will need futuring, or maybe we need to have this ability to think of bold and strange ideas, maybe in these vulnerable communities, or maybe these inspiring ideas that you have both shared already. Because it's only through this example that other cities and other communities can learn. And so when we think of inclusivity, we have to think of the most vulnerable ones, because it is a need at the end for cities to integrate the agendas, not only for technological improvement or innovation, but also for poverty alleviation, to address the need of human mobility, or address better these interests of ensuring the best life quality for everybody. but also because the climate agenda benefits from all these discourses together. So at the end, coalition building is for us essential for inclusive change, but also it's essential to address uncertainty. And when we move out of the city, and we move out of these vulnerable communities, and we go to this national or international agenda, we see different type of leaderships nowadays. Sometimes these leaderships might drive change in a different direction. So we need cities to showcase how this is not only important, these transitions or these transformations are important, but also urgent. And that's why the conversation in the coalition building entails integrating media, integrating kids, integrating the elderly, integrating the woman, because we can have different leaderships. And in that process, maybe learning is a new skill that we can develop, or we can learn from each other. And because if this is a conversation, maybe it's only about exchanging and integrating this knowledge that we can create something meaningful and inclusive for everyone.
Good. It makes us stronger and more connected, right? And more powerful to drive what we stand for, right?
Or to fight more. We don't know. We don't know. We have to think of these alternative futures in general, but we need to be bold at the end. We need more creative tools because we know the logic, we know the science, but now we need to take actions. These actions are urgent, and this needs to be translated, and this needs to be mainstream. So transformation or transition through projects is very nice, but we need to extrapolate this there, and we need to keep the actions ongoing on the ground.
Another short question to all of you. In your work or with your experience, what do you see the most important trends that are coming in the future for the cities, for your work, for co-creation? What will be a challenge, let's say, in the near or longer future? Giorgia already addressed some in our activities with the cities. I don't know, Andrea.
I think we're fighting with TikTok, basically. So if we want to, basically, well, not only this information, but the format that we use to deliver messages are difficult for the people on the ground, not only citizens, but in general. If this room, I'm sorry if there are mayors, but if this room were full of mayors, I lost them in the first minute. Because they have many things in their heads all the time, and the agendas are so busy, and we're bombarded by information. So I like this concept of learning nuggets. So we need to give small bits of information. Maybe the format should be lighter. So maybe one skill that we need in the future is maybe transport this capacity development into more micro-learning skills in a format that is very digestible, not only to deliver a fast message, but to engage people, because we are competing with very, maybe not interesting for us, but maybe for others, catchy videos and catchy messages and disinformation.
Distracting that.
Or maybe distracting, exactly. So maybe we can also learn how to deliver better the knowledge, but also we could learn from each other and maybe have this knowledge integration. Maybe we need more influencers in our actions and in our conditions, in our projects. And yes, just build this knowledge in small capsules, and maybe that could be a very good skill for the future, I hope.
Maybe more creators that will go. Maybe with this.
Well, I guess trust is the most important part whenever you try to do something. As already mentioned, building that trust might be the future challenge for the generations to come. Co-creation is an approach, and how you're doing. It's quite intense, quite in the work you've already done. We could witness that cities that already had some connection with the local communities find it much easier to be heard. I think people are tired of just receiving directives from the top, like, you're gonna live your life like that, and this is what I'm gonna do, this is good for you. So this is not trust, this is let's say, governance, but in a bad way, like in my opinion. So I think a trend, a definitive trend, we can see from the Commission's direction as well, that we need to implicate the citizens more in everything. It is a way of educating ourselves and them at the same time on what we're doing, I guess. It could be a first time for many of them, for some cities. For example, in our project, it was the first time a citizen was even asked, Joanna, what do you think? Like, what do I think? So I guess, what do you think? So do we put the parking station for the bicyclists there or not there, not at all? What do you think? And then they would fight again. No, I don't want one. The bicycle association said, no, I want one because I want to go around. Okay, let's find halfway. Let's see how we can work this out. So this is a definitive trend. We're implicating citizens in this decision-making process. And it's something you cannot go back from because they will demand next time you try to do something. Maybe that technically trends are quite many on how do you decide the city. It depends on the advancement and the level the city is advanced. We have cities that have first world problems like Copenhagen, that the problem is we have too many bikes. People cannot walk through them in the parking lot, so we have to split the bikes parking lots. And then we have, the Zaragoza 2% uses a bike, and Ioannina 0.01% uses a bike. What's that? I've never used it. Why should I use it? I'm going to get wet if it rains, and so on. So in technical terms, the leading cities provide the trends for the ones. I guess so. A trend would be that you have to customize the solutions for the cities and how they approach the public and what they actually want to do. You cannot make jumps. You need to go by a due process, because if you move too fast, the changes will most likely be rejected. So customization was always a trend in the latest 10 years for everything, from products to how they address the customer's needs. So this is one more occasion, I think.
I think it closes nicely with the circle to your the first session, to your statement that you say we go to the cities and take them where they are and go with them forward, right?
And I think we're talking about now trends and challenges, of course, and I echo what you have said in particular around the trust and around information, and I think the emphasis now that is being put both in Europe but actually across the world on themes like housing really shows that there is this attention to get closer also to the needs of the citizens. One thing that I feel it's a bit of an opportunity, and I hope that it will increasingly become an opportunity. I think the more and more there is an interest to understand also what middle-sized cities are facing, rather than just the big capitals of the world. And the world is made of many more small and middle-sized cities, right, across the board. So learning and being able to also, again, understand the solutions that are being deployed there are very helpful. I also feel that there is, especially, not maybe from every city, but an increased sense of humility. Cities are getting a little bit more humble, so in understanding now other parts of the world are facing certain challenges. So you might be extremely advanced when it comes to maybe technology or technological solutions, but maybe you have a lot to learn, for example, from the Global South, about examples of engagements and co-creation, which have been, up and running for much longer than in some of the communities in the Global North. So I think that's also something that it's an opportunity to really tap into that tradition, into that potential, and into that knowledge. And then finally, a growing trend is those cities that are doubling, tripling, becoming tenfold the size that they are right now. This happens, in Africa in particular, but in general in Asia, in the Global South mostly. These new and rapidly expanding and urbanizing communities, they bring a lot of challenges, of course, because with all the freedom that you have to create new places, it can also go extremely wrong. But they are also spaces where if you manage to bring together that co-creation that you were talking about with this vision of a better future, you can actually chart out something that is very new, very exciting, and that can really teach also others, new lessons learned and how to improve the quality of life. So I think that's, again, it is a challenge, it is a trend that we see demographically speaking, but it's also a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you so much for your words. Are there any questions? We are now open to a discussion. Yes, of course.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I feel like I'm learning a lot by being here, so apologies. This is a bit more extractive from my side. My name's Chris. I come from the UN Futures Lab. So a couple of things that I was wondering in all of your experiences. One is the role of the informal in the urban areas, and whether we're thinking urban subcultures, skateboarding, graffiti, hip hop, and so on and so forth. So the first question is, how do your respective areas interact with the informal within urban areas, which have such a long history of creating movements, a change, and changing the kind of the bend and curve in development? And so that's one question. And then the related question is related to the TikTok question. How do you anticipate the future and the emerging informal areas and spaces where people can really subvert the meaning of cities, whether directly questioning the architects and the meanings of architects and so on and so forth? What happens there? So if we look forward 5, 10, 20 years, what does that look like to all of you? Sorry, that was a really long question.
We do include the informal in every single, let's say, workshop we have. For example, Stricada city, they did include activist associations, they did include local youth associations. So, yeah, they need to be able to feel that they own this change. Not feel, they should actually own this change in order to embrace it. While, for example, let's say, we had recently a plenary meeting in Zaragoza, we went through the area. One of the reasons they're making a big change in the urban design of the specific road and place is that a child was killed by the tram a few months ago. So it touched the whole community. You could understand that there is an issue, but a few blocks away from that location, they vandalized the bicycle method parking spot because they thought that by adding more bicycles you reduce the accessibility to their houses, some of them maybe also. So, okay, not everyone is going to do that, but the informal probably does, and I'm not here to judge if it's good or bad. Sometimes maybe it's good because you have done something wrong. Even this is that you didn't communicate it properly, you didn't include anyone in this decision. So, yeah, after some effort and after some proper communication channels and bringing everyone to the table to discuss, I think that now, by vandalizing, I don't mean graffiti. I don't consider graffiti vandalism. But yeah, we provide everyone the room to express themselves in a productive manner and be part of the community. Rather, have an antisocial behavior, and which is usually caused by society, in my opinion. So we are at fault when this happens one way or another. So we need to address this and try to align everyone.
Okay.
Even if we fight.
Yeah, we get to fight. Yeah. Thank you. I think we need to position ourselves in a neighborhood, because the city, at the city level, it is the strategic level, it is the policy level, but the actions on the ground, and when we speak about informality, we usually speak about informal settlements. And informality is the result of inaction, but at the same time, for the people experiencing it is the lack of access to water, or the lack of access to proper housing, or the lack of access to proper conditions when a heat wave comes. So it means higher exposure and higher vulnerability at the end.
So I think the process is not about addressing informality in itself, but addressing the consequences of informality and how this entails radical change in the way of city provision. However, what informality has, it's a power of ownership. If you go to a neighborhood and you decide, I'm going to switch the bike places, no, this is not your decision. If you go to difficult neighborhoods, also when we have other type of powers on the ground, you cannot enter the territory at the beginning, no? It's a concept that entails working with people, regardless of formal or informality, but city making is a process that should be as formal and as open as possible because it requires policy coherence. It requires coordination across sectors to be transformative. We have a project in Latin America. It's called the Transformative Urban Coalitions Project. We work in Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. And we are working with a specific neighborhood in Buenos Aires called Barrio 20 now, Villa 20 before, because of this reurbanization process. And the persons leading the change and leading the nature-based solution implementation, the thermometer and citizen science are the community leaders, are the people on the ground. And so they believe in this process as the city makers. And I think that's the shift for us. It's not about delivering through the regular power or regular policy makers, but through the people, the policy changes. Through the implementation of demonstrative activities and experimentation, then the policy can learn and maybe sustain this in the process. So throughout this learning of experimentation in vulnerable communities, we have learned that, of course, climate action doesn't come without social justice, and that's why it's so important to insist on this doing with, by, and for the community, because it is the only way to sustain actions. But also when we consider these alternative futures in which the people could alleviate their more urgent needs, they need agency, and we need to provide in this coalition building a sense of agency and sharing power. It entails also the possibility of crafting new futures. So if we think about futuring as this crafting possibility, I come to the second question. Maybe TikTok is just a message, or maybe a micro-learning video is just a message, but who's delivering? Maybe it's the people in itself. Maybe they are the ones that are co-producing this knowledge with some different expertises and delivering it to the world. So maybe this dialogue, as Giorgia mentioned it, is not only local, but also local to global, because we can learn from this exchange. So I think that maybe what we need to address is how the planning, implementation, but also sustainability of the actions entail a new type of leadership. And maybe this leadership entails also, of course, crafting new units of implementation. Maybe the neighborhood level has more decision-making on that specific neighborhood for some reasons. I know this is very idealistic and maybe it won't be easy to implement everywhere, but I think that's the beauty of innovation. When it comes with the social, the ecological, and technological together, we all learn by doing, but also we learn by telling what we have been doing and by listening to others what they have been doing. Part of the project of this implementation on the ground is our role as researchers to integrate this knowledge from the different cities. And I lead the capacity development component, and I have the privilege to go to COP, for example, with participants from the ground, the first time taking a plane, the first time taking and making the passport, the first time delivering a message to people that doesn't look like them. And this has been so transformative. In the sense of, I want to learn English now, I want to study a career, I want to come back to my community and live, because maybe if we liaise with other neighborhoods, then we can have more power. and I think that's amazing already. It doesn't become viral if it doesn't go to these learning nuggets yet, but the message is already there. Maybe we just need to tailor better channels, and maybe we need to tailor better conversations. And I agree with what you say at the beginning. We need the conversations on the ground and in presence, because it is a very different reality when we have these conversations, for example, now about climate here in Bonn, that is very different than if we have it maybe in the Amazon or in somewhere else. Because at the end is integrating these realities, and integrating this knowledge is the beauty of this challenge. And I'm optimistic as well that I think we need to think of all of these processes as an opportunity. Thank you. Briefly from my side, I think the ownership of these processes is definitely at the core of all of this issue. I don't feel that our cities are still a question around whether it makes sense to have this grassroots organization or the community or the informal part within the city not engaged. I think everyone understands that it's the only way to move forward with a joint vision that actually has purpose. I think where the difficulty starts is understanding what are the best methods to have that type of engagement. So we have a lot of communities that have a long history, for example, of doing things like citizen town halls and having local youth counselors, really try to engage these different parts of society. But they tell us, for example, I'm getting a lot of youth, but I have no voice. Everyone, identifies themselves as a girl when they come to, as a woman when they come to our town hall. We have no teenage girls, no teenage boys joining. So even though there might be, that idea of trying to engage certain parts of society to do that in a meaningful manner, sometimes the ways to include the right people, or at least, not just the converted that are joining when you're discussing this issue, that's where the difficulty comes. And this is where, for example, as a mission, we like to work with partners like the Donald Economics Lab or with the Presencing Institute at the MIT to really look into how do we develop techniques that can accompany this more administration level part of the city to really onboard different types of sectors in the society, different types of representation, this type of grassroots organization in a way that really helps not only design the future, but really have a joint sense making of where we are trying to head with the development of the entire city. So that's, I think, quite important as a tool that we don't provide directly ourselves to the cities, but we work in partnership with others to really try to support them with. And this is also where the peer-to-peer is actually coming across quite strongly, because all of our communities have this issue. All of them. They know that it's important. They all have a similar problem. Maybe some are more successful than others. But they do share with each other what type of techniques have been working, how they use some of the new tools, for example, that are available out there. And we can tap a lot of potential from that point of view. And then one final reflection on a specific sector. I think that a specific type of community that sometimes, is not as engaged as it should be. We have quite a number of our cities in Chile, in Canada, that have been working very strongly in engaging more the indigenous part of their community. And that is a process, that it's extremely important. I mentioned before, going back to some of the historic knowledge, some of the traditions, and that has been very impactful in tracking challenges around, for example, urban sprawling, issues related, for example, to water scarcity, issues related to biodiversity protection. So there are already a lot of very good examples of how, by having the right techniques and opening, a bit our mind to new ways of thinking what is a city, you can bring on board different communities that can really share of solutions that perhaps are not the immediate ones that you would think of. And I think, again, the peer-to-peer there is particularly important. And I'd like to direct you to the Global Research Action Agenda that is being developed by the Global Covenant of Mayors in partnership with UN Habitat. There is a whole chapter that will be dedicated to really understand what are the research gaps around informality, but also collecting good examples of how informality is being included as a prime element, as a pillar in the way that communities are developing their own trajectory to net zero resilience and music futures.
Thanks. So super interesting.
Thank you for your questions. Other questions or comments, or you want to share some insights? There's some thinking going on, I see it.
I would like so currently being the head of comms at NO, I'm doing a lot of interviews with our members. And the trust is the cornerstone of this collaboration with engaging with citizens. But another important aspect that we always talk about, and it's also the practice on the field, is to be very clear to those you engage in the process, what are your limitations. Do not promise, because you want green pastures, I don't know, whatever, that will happen. No, you have to be very honest from the onset, what are your limitations. And that's why the approach of Living Labs is working, because you're bringing so many stakeholders that can already see what the limitations are. Whether you're from the city hall and you're like, we have a different rule for that, the policy, but being honest from the onset and giving the clear guidelines is the success. And that's how the trust is being built. I just wanted to
Thank you for this. So that's very important, yes.
Good. I just probably quick questions for the Iasonas. I get to Christmas have been here throughout the entire day so far, so you have hard that you didn't read about the CPM and the UTMC and the ending sense of Unity, which is my global perspective, really low yet, but there are also a number of European cities there. But the greatest majority is about actual maturities, but a bit more than half they come from global south. So my question for you, you clearly work on a project that is very much mobility related. So most of the cities that have hotline mobility is one of the issue that they're working mostly with. So my question is if you've seen so far with the group of cities that you work, some key results, some key topics, so key elements that you think may be also useful and interesting for the cities that will work with in the global side as well, to the team to work. If you have any product that you might be interesting, for example, to share in the platform, and then just in the platform. So just to understand if you think there is any connection that you see there.
Poi the results we currently have are mostly of the use of the tools and the methodologies that we developed. I mentioned in the interview we held in the morning, I think the methodology itself is applicable on a global scale. I mean, it's a set of steps that you can take to engage the community. Of course, different backgrounds, different ideologies in total, and how you see the world from a place to another, especially outside Europe, could affect that. So you need more custom-made solutions. But we had to make custom-made solutions for every single city in a way, or the evaluation plan that they would have on and how they approach their cities and so on. But generally, I think the approach is common. It has to do with how much you want to work as a city with the people, how you make connections, who you probably identify as stakeholders. They don't differ that much. I mean, you either walk, you either cycle, or you drive. You cannot fly yet, but they have flying taxis that are not so ecological anyway. So I would say the initial result is this approach. We are still in the process now of implementing the intervention. So by next year, we will probably have much more data, hopefully, and positive reactions from the public, hopefully. We are interested in this. There are a set of the digital tools that we have been used. They are, of course, the IPR, the rights, the intellectual property rights, belong specifically Partners, and I mentioned one of them, for example, Super Barrio is very useful tool. They do display publicly in conventions, so I don't think they would have an issue when bringing it up in the platform. I have registered already, but they could register, I guess, separately. The only thing is that it takes some customization then, because they have actually need to teach you how to create your own neighborhood map, how to work with it, and so on, which they are very open to doing so for their own reasons, I guess, with no fee. So yeah, I think I could probably give them a heads up. Okay, yeah, and it. Yeah.
How long is your project still ongoing?
It's 42 months in total. We are in month 24, 5 right now. Yeah. The next year, November, we will be over. Yeah.
Currently.
I think following the line of the question is more of an invitation to collaborate, maybe for Andrea. You mentioned within these three main topics that you're working with: diversity in the spider of leadership, and also the other one about building narratives. One of the outcomes that you mentioned was policy.
We need networks, because we need the policy out, but we also need policymakers to take it. So thank you.
And Elli, I would like to just kind of bring up another perspective. I mean, you keep also hearing that action efforts in cities. I mean, cities are kind of the drive and the solutions to tunnels and so on. At the same time, we also hear a lot about the challenges they face and the support they need from the national level. So in that sense, what do we think is the best approach to, how we can push cities to gain more power from the national level and for the international level, not just national, but in that sense, as I think we come across this question over and over. It's not an easy question that you mentioned earlier, like you find no question. So yeah.
Hi, Winston. Policy coherence is a challenge nowadays. I'm sorry, I'm going to call back to the climate conversation all the time, because this is why this week is so important for Bonn. No, precisely because here we are discussing at the global level the future of cities at the end. That's why it's so relevant to have this time. So the spotlight, let's say, in the cities and what cities can do, because we have been discussing that cities are at the forefront, cities are strategic, but in the policy alignment itself, we go to political cycles, we go to political fronts, we go to different type of challenges in itself. So I consider that it's maybe the opportunity to create these bigger coalitions through city networks, through researchers, through implementers, to private sector also, because this is a very important actor nowadays, that we can liaise and position not only the agenda for cities, but the integration of agendas, because at the end, we are talking about the same, at different scale, at different levels, but we're talking about the same. We need solutions, because the problems are urgent, the needs are extreme. So practicalities, I think we need to listen more. I think we need to be more engaged in the conversations now. This week in Bonn, there are many conversations at the same time in which cities could be introduced all along, but also we think of collaboration at the end. We could think of bigger and joint efforts, not only because this coalition building cannot be city by city, but cities need bigger networks. And these networks are the ones that can translate this knowledge into fast solutions. And that's why it's so relevant to integrate innovation at the center of this conversation. And this innovation entails also new skills. And that's why, in my understanding, narratives and the potential of having these soft and technical skills together is a key
entry point. Not only through the technical knowledge, but through the possibility of understanding the emotions of having a solar panel or what it delivers. Then we can have a momentum on the ground at the global level. But of course now the opportunity is to liaise, I would say, is to liaise and try to bring the same agenda to the Yes, thank you.
And just a last sentence, and there are some initiatives and projects that are working exactly on this, or this multi-level governance, and they call it establishing platforms. And the Viable Cities was such an initiator of working on this. And then the soft skills, of course, there are tools, there are the living labs that are working exactly on this. There are strategic foresight experts that are working exactly on this. So having these different experts and expertise and stakeholders, if you have them, all of them in one room, you have a more holistic view and a more multi-level approach, definitely. So if there are no other questions,
we have a popular phrase in Greece that the fish stinks from the head. We have come into many issues regarding policy, from automated vehicles to electric scooters running on the pedestrian streets and being driven by minors. On one point you need a central government decision, how well you move and so on. On the other part, some local authorities have taken action against that. So I guess, we should listen, but probably governments should listen as well to the needs of the communities. I will give an example. For example, in Helsinki, on Friday and Saturday, electric scooters are banned by the local government, by the local authority, because there were accidents quite close to fatal ones. So you can do things at the local level if no one is listening, but maybe we should start with a direction from the European Parliament probably towards that, so that governments are in a way forced to start listening that we should put some attention on those matters. So gathering the matters that really affect us is a beginning, I think, of this, and the municipalities should be heard up to a point on this.
Good. Maybe one thing that I can suggest is that you follow a little bit more closely, perhaps with some ideas, the challenge process, the coalition for high-level ambition. This is Peter Mikla exploded that very well, but for colleagues here, it brings together national governments that basically sign up to a commitment to develop the next version of the NDCs in collaboration with the local government. Each national government can decide what type of vehicles they want to use to operationalize such commitment. They were very pleased to say the UK, for example, has included the Urban Transition Mission as one of their vehicles in the NDCs to make that connection happen. So there are also things moving, and there are some good ideas. Maybe it's also about learning what things examples are, and then calling on the other national government and saying, see, it is possible. Come on, be inspired.
I think we could go on for hours talking, but I think the other session and speakers are waiting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Elli.
And let me just say, thanks very much for this panel. We will now wait for a light lunch. It's just your side, just make work.